So I'm going to be looking at supporting literacy teachers and closing the achievement gap for students in poverty. This topic is important because an achievement gap exists among marginalized students. The role of the teacher in increasing student achievement is something I want to examine, and I'd like to look at the educational leader's role in supporting teacher effectiveness. I chose to look at students in poverty because not only does it hurt families and affect student performance, but it's a bigger problem for our political leaders and citizens because inequality affects and hurts everyone in society, not just the poor. The significance of the problem states that there are negative effects of poverty on achievement, especially in reading. There is a need for effective teachers to mitigate these inequities, and there's a lack of research on the role of the educational leader in how to support and work with teachers in order to close the achievement gap. So based on this, I looked at the assessment scores from the NAEP with students having free or reduced lunch status, which is one criteria for determining poverty in the school. It's also the criteria Title I uses to identify students and schools. And I looked at fourth grade ELA, actually focusing in the area of reading. And this study, this was in 2017, which is the latest data available on the site. If you notice, the dark blue bar represents children eligible for free lunch and where they scored as compared to the next or middle blue bar, which are those students not eligible for free or reduced price lunch. And so it definitely shows that there's a negative effect of poverty on reading achievement. The research questions that I looked at are: what are the common elements of effective English language arts instruction for all students? What are historically ineffective approaches to literacy that still negatively influences literacy for instruction today for some students? How do current ELA initiatives oppress diverse student populations? How can ELA teachers mitigate inequities that exist among students in poverty? And how can leaders support teachers in their effort to close the achievement gap? So this review of the literature looks at several common themes, including social justice. I'll look at critical literacy and educational leaders for social justice. And these were also some of my search terms. So my study is based on the premise that the effective teacher is one of the most important things, or one of the most important aspects in closing the achievement gap in literacy or in all subjects. However, I did find an article with a viewpoint that says the teacher is not the most effective aspect of student learning, but it says that school effects only account for about 20% in the variation of student achievement test scores. So teachers represent only a small portion of the influence. Other school variables such as peer group effects, quality of principal leadership, school finance, availability of counseling and special ed services, all of these things, etc., also play a role in that 20%. However, out-of-school variables for students make up about 60% of the variance that can be accounted for in student achievement. Factors such as family income, neighborhood sense of collective efficacy, violence rates, average incomes, medical and dental care, those are things that influence student achievement more than the teacher. And it also states that by age 18, children and youth have spent about 10% of their lives in what we call schools, but spend around 90% of their lives around family and in their neighborhoods. So I did not want to leave out this perspective. The author of these studies do admit that the teacher is important. However, there's also bigger things to address, such as poverty which includes raising the minimum wage, so that society needs to be addressed as a whole, which I do agree with. But in my opinion, the variable we have control over now would be the teacher. So again, all of these things, poverty is also social, and bigger issues need to be addressed. But in the meantime, I'd like to focus on how to work with teachers in this area. So the next steps in my research and that I've been collecting information on include the influence of the Common Core state standards and assessments in reading, which have definitely impacted students, more so marginalized students. I'm going to look at historically ineffective approaches, such as traditional approaches, ranking students, and deficit thinking that still exist in some schools today. And I'm also looking for more effective approaches. So I've been reviewing the literature on critical literacy theory as one effective way to mitigate the inequities for students in poverty. Another area that I'm looking at deals with how educational leaders can support teachers to help close the achievement gap for students in poverty. And the following slides are my references, some of which I think many of you may also be looking at for your papers. So if you have any comments or feedback for me, I definitely would appreciate it. Thank you.